And obviously, I guess the business has been trading for a lot of time. There must have been lots of ups and downs, lots of different events, which are probably like too much, would take too much time to kind of
Yeah.
go through. But are you able to kind of summarize how the journey kind of maybe
Yeah.
went initially, and then a bit of a roadmap until now,
Yeah.
how it's kind of changed?
So initially when we set up, we accommodated people in independent hotels,
Yeah.
because that's what I knew. But after 9/11, we moved into four-star hotels because the Americans stopped coming here, and then the corporate hotels were giving us some great opportunities. And then once we got into 2008 with the credit crunch, that's when we had a whole load of experiences come online with us because we had the reputation, they trusted us. So the private access element just went through the roof, which was absolutely great for us. So we saw, some huge growth. And then once we got into 2020, I was looking at exiting. So my wife and I were thinking about exiting, and then everything changed. The world changed. People stopped traveling, which meant we stopped trading, which meant every week we were losing money. We appreciate the support that was given by the government in terms of furloughs, but despite that, we had to give refunds back and all these sorts of things.
Yeah, of course.
And the question was, do we stop trading? Do we close the business? Or do we restart? And I'm 52 years of age. I set up the company when I was 27, and I'm thinking, no, I can't fail, because I kind of think back to the conversation that we've had, messages from my mother and father, and I definitely, have my father's approach, which is, no, if we're going to go down, we go down fighting here. We're not going to go down with a whimper. So we were losing money, we were burning through cash, and I just thought, we have an analog business which is very customer service driven. The world has changed. The 60-something-year-old has changed in terms of her expectations. Let's now build our own flat platform and become a digital travel business. And I know nothing about coding, but 5 years down the line, I know a little bit about it. Took on some coders who are still with me today. They're fantastic because they put up with my weird and wacky ideas, and they've coded things which are basically in my head on this platform to give the ultimate sort of booking experience so that we can deliver the ultimate, guest experience. But one thing that was important, I switched from customer service, which is reactive, to guest experience, which is proactive. Let's give people something that they don't know exists. And let's put that online, because Sally, who's this latest sort of avatar of traveler, she's the first generation to have had a PC at her desk. She's recently retired, well-traveled, has money, has time, but is saying, I want something special. And that's our job, to give Sally something special that she can book online.
No, thank you for that. Ranjiv, why were you looking to exit out of interest at that point?
Well, because I'd really enjoyed mentoring university students, and we wanted to buy a building and use that as a tech hub.
Okay.
And just give them all the advice that they needed so they wouldn't make the mistakes, loads of mistakes that I'd made. And I have a great network of friends as well who are willing to sort of, offer, accountancy, legal, marketing services. So if we could create some sort of hub for these, the next gen of entrepreneurs, because, I didn't want to, I wanted to make it easier for the next gen.
Completely understood. And what was you said when you went through what you went through at COVID, you said like your father's kind of mentality of like, if we're going to go down, we're not going to go down without a fight. You could argue you've already been through so much, quite a lot of success. What was your incentive to keep going from your perspective? What was your incentive?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I spoke to my wife about it, who was very encouraging. Let's go for it. I went on to this small business leadership program that really is like an MBA in 12 weeks. I think they call it Help to Grow now. And when I was on that, I just thought, this is a very different way of thinking. We were taught about resilience and marketing and innovation, but it was very innovation led. And when we were having our breakouts with case studies, we had 6 minutes to solve a problem, including introducing ourselves to the 5 other people. And when I saw how agile people were thinking, I just thought, I think this is a challenge that I can't turn down here. And if we can switch our business from an analog to digital one, switch the target market, switch the product, think differently, take on a new team predominantly, let's have a restart up here. My wife's saying, well, you're 52, but you've got good experience here. At least you know what not to do. But actually, I didn't know what to do, because post-pandemic, Junaid, we're in a new era. We're in a new world. In fact, I would say that only 25% of what I knew before the pandemic was relevant post-pandemic.
Wow. Okay. That kind of almost go back to startup mentality, pretty much.
It's a startup mentality, and it's a rethink mentality. I had to change the way I did business. If I tell you that because of my customer service mentality, and because I wanted to do the right thing, not the convenient thing, and this is going to answer a question in your favor now. I used to give out compensation because I believed what the guests were telling us. And invariably, the hotel would challenge it because they were more interested in money. And I worked out during the pandemic that we were giving out £80,000 a year over 25 years without getting that compensation back from our hotel and experience providers. 80,000 times 25 years is £2 million of compensation that we were giving out because we thought we were doing the right thing. And that was a chilling thought. So that changed the way I thought about business. The first thing we had to do was get the right suppliers. And we've got 5 criteria, on which we grade our suppliers. And that was analyzing 15,000 plus events. So I had plenty of time, but that small business leadership program was fantastic in terms of changing the way I thought, made us more innovative, and made me think in a more agile way.
Really interesting. Ranjiv, if I take you with the amount you've seen, some people are in a limbo in terms of should I be a corporate professional, or should I go and be an entrepreneur? And you kind of, to be fair, I'm sure would have been faced with that question as well. Do you go up in the States, go down a kind of corporate route? Have you got any kind of route where someone can kind of answer that question? Is entrepreneurship right for them, or is it more suitable for them to go down a kind of corporate career? That's a very broad question, but I don't know if you've got any perspective on how someone can maybe find out what's better for them.
It's a great question, and I'm not going to say I know the answer, because it really depends on the individual motivation. And if you look at today, being in the corporate world, it means that you've got to follow rules, and you might be slightly shackled. But as you go further up, you may well have more of a say. I think my issue is authenticity. And authenticity for me is the gap between what companies say that they're going to give you and what they actually give you. And if you feel that authenticity gap is quite low in a corporate environment, then you can follow that. But if you think it's too big and you feel that you're selling out, then you've got choices, either work for a smaller business or set up by yourself.
And if someone does want to go on the journey, if you have to now reverse engineer back, what's the most important things for someone starting out if they're going to start a business? What would you say they've got to try and do? What have they got to try and get right? What's the most important skills? What would you say early on?
I think the first thing you've got to ask yourself is, if you're going to set up your own company, what problem are you solving? Because you're setting up a company because you believe you can solve a problem better than what's out there. So what problem are you solving? Secondly, why are you solving it in a different way to what's out there? And then the third thing I would say is to do this, what are you prepared to sacrifice? Because, you've got to sacrifice your time, maybe some friendships. In the short term, when I say friendships, in terms of the time that you spend with your friends, maybe family as well, because when an opportunity comes, it won't always come on a Tuesday morning at 11 a.m. when the sun's out. You're on it 24/7. And therefore your network of friends is really, really important, because they'll challenge you, they'll challenge your ideas. And that's why this authenticity sort of focus that I have is so important, because what you don't want to have is it's a group of friends or people around you that say everything is amazing. You want people to sort of just question what you're doing, challenge what you're doing, and so that they're asking you questions that make you think before you act.
What about skills? What if, so, like a lot of people, I'd say, like in the corporate setting, Ranjiv, they'll say to me that I'd like to do something, but I've not got experience in sales. I don't know anything about marketing. So there's so many skills involved. Do you think people overthink all of that part then? Because you've kind of spoken more about the mindset part of it, but what about the skill side of it?
Yeah, in terms of the skills, I don't think people overthink that area, because I think it's important, because you're always going to doubt yourself. Do I have enough skills to do this? But I think first of all, you don't have to be a salesperson to win sales. I think you've just got to be able to be clear with what your offering is, be clear with how you present it, be clear with the benefits, be clear with why you're different. What I tend to do also is I tell people what the downside is with our product as well. People are going to go on a steam train experience. I'll say, this is great. You're going back to the golden era of travel. But if your market is people who value sustainability, this is not the market. I think it's really, really important. And this is why I sort of question a lot of the advertising agencies, even today. What they do is they make an assumption by trying to elevate the audience by saying, well, we assume that the audience is intelligent, so we're only going to tell you what the pros are. Well, actually, I assume also that our audience is intelligent, but also intelligent enough to want all the information. And my job is to give them all the information, the good and the bad. By giving them the bad, it makes me hone and improve our product, so that actually there's only one downside, not five. And I think as long as you're authentic with your offering, and in terms of your skills, just look at data. If you're able to extract data and harness it, and then adjust your message accordingly in your product or your service, I think that's fine. I mean, I've got people who are very much in the corporate world, got into setting up their own company, but they're very proud of their pricing. They're charging as if they're in the corporate world, even though their overheads are just an office, a desk, and themselves. So I think you've got to be realistic as well.
What would you say most of the main reasons why businesses fail? So many of them do fail.
Well, they fail because they don't adjust to the market. They're not able to call the market. If you ask accountants, they'll say they run out of cash, which I think is a fair reason. But in terms of the solutions, what I changed after the pandemic was, instead of having 3-year plans and quarterly plans, I had 10 100-day plans. Have a 100-day plan, have 10 of them, because 12 quarters of 90 days is a little bit sort of old hat, but 10 energetic 100-day plans are going to get you to where you want to be.
Why are you breaking it down? What's the reason for that you're breaking it down into those chunks?
Because what I found is that when I had a 90-day plan, I achieved more in the next 10 days. And it just gives you that little bit of leeway when you're taking a risk, just allowing things to brew a bit. It just gives you that extra bit of time. When it's 90 days, there's a rush once you get to 80 days. You're trying to finish things off. But I just found that a lot of things happened and materialized in my favor and in our favor in those next 10 days.
Interesting. What about the emotional side of it? Like, I definitely feel, going on an entrepreneurial journey, stuff goes wrong and and you think that
Yeah.
you're always questioning yourself, where am I doing the right thing? And maybe, I don't know, something's gone really wrong with a customer, or you lost something, and you know what I mean? How do you process those moments? And have you got any advice when, yeah, how should someone process those sort of failures, if you call it, or those sort of
Mm,
bad events? Because I definitely feel from a corporate setting, things were a little bit more settled, right? You'd have good and bad days at work, but I feel in a business it's so much more heightened.
yeah.
Everything is, the highs can be very high, but the lows can be very low. Um, how do you kind of keep going, would you say? Like, what's your kind of,
I know this is going to sound very cliched, but failures are good because what it means is you're taking yourself out of your comfort zone. Uh, it's your reaction to the failures that really is, I suppose, what you're asking for. And your reaction is, or one's reaction should be, right, let's be straightforward here. Let's be authentic. What went wrong here? What did I do wrong? What did my team do wrong? What did our company do wrong here? If you look inwardly first, and that will, most of the time, that will give you the solution, because you've got to look at what you can control. Yeah. So what did you do wrong? Similarly, when you do things well, just think, what did I do right and how can I tweak it? So if you've done something wrong, change it. If you've done something right, tweak it. Self-reflection is really important. Authentic self-reflection is critical to finding a solution. And I call that the method. You know, if you do something, review it, tweak it. A win is only a win if the method is replicable, because you want to take luck out of the equation. So if you keep reviewing what you do, what did I do right? And that's one thing that we really train hard on when we recruit people. I think a lot of companies shortchange their team members by not giving them the opportunity or the time to self-reflect. And secondly, when it's the company that's done something wrong, the company needs to change, not the team members.
no, I completely agree with that. What if I talk about some bottlenecks, Ranjiv, maybe, which I find that with a business, there's so much to do, isn't there? You
Yeah.
feel there's, so you're juggling so many balls, you have to wear so many hats. And I guess that self-reflection, you need to actually take time to do that. And sometimes it could be tempting to think, you know what, let's just park that and let's just try and focus on this customer right now. So uh, I guess you'd have to be so disciplined to actually take time out to do the self-reflection, wouldn't you? Right? Like,
Yeah, but what you'll do is when an event happens, an incident happens, it's a time to just think, what's just happened. And I'm not talking about, a big discussion for 3 hours. What I'm talking about is just a quick self-reflection. What happened? Yeah, if you've got clear thoughts, you'll know in 30 seconds what's happened. And then you just quickly make the adjustment, and that's agile thinking. And what you'll find is, if a problem's occurred in one area, it will probably occur somewhere else. So one solution will probably solve multiple areas. So you're right, there are obstacles. For example, if you're losing sales, what is it? Why are we losing sales? Is it because of our price? Is it our product? Is it the way we're messaging it? Is the timing wrong? So these are the things you got to look at. In terms of suppliers, let's be honest, we work with some top brands, but sometimes they're not up to our standard. So, we got to have the power to walk away, and they're the ones causing us problems. And just clarity, going back to what we said at the beginning, if you took money off the table, what would you do? I wouldn't work with that brand. Why? Because that brand is giving us one message, but delivering another. And we're going to call it out because we believe in being premium, not premium mediocre. Out there, if you think about it, when was the last time you were wowed? You went to a restaurant, you went to a shop, you traveled. Just think, when was the last time you were wowed? And what you'll find is that a lot of companies who charge premium offer mediocrity. And when you call that out, they'll make excuses. It's not my fault, and you don't want to be, they're the things that create bottlenecks. When you're offering something and, the client or the customer has said, well, have you really offered what you said you would? And if you're honest, you'll go, yes, because of this. But what you can't do is, yes, but it wasn't my fault that, and because of that, I couldn't. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is, to be honest, quite a common response.
It's a common response, but if you can apply an element of emotional intelligence, which is looking at the other person's perspective,
Absolutely.
Again, it gives you clarity. So, look at what you can control, look at what they're complaining about, and fix it. And when I speak to our travel partners, and if we've underperformed, the first thing I'll do is I'll explain where we've underperformed, the impact it had on them, and the change we've made. And that is a form of collaboration, because what I'm also inviting them to do is do the same thing back to us.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I really like. I was just thinking about the money off the table point, which is honestly one of my favorite points. And I was just thinking about it even in this context, where if you are taking money off the table, it's probably easier to digest some of those failures. I was just thinking about that, right? Because where I just thought about your scenario where you worked out you were losing 80 grand a year over the course of 25 years. Now, if you think too much about the money, it's probably too hard to get over, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's probably too hard to get over. Whereas if you take the money out of the equation, okay, what do we need to do differently now? Let's do it. Whereas if you think too much about the money, you'll probably be lost. That would just depress you thinking about that money for that length of time, right?
You're right. You lose hope. But what I did was I used that as a stimulant to say, right, I've lost, that amount of money. Right now, I'm going to take control of this whole situation now. We're going to change our travel partners. From now on, we're not going to have clients. We're going to have travel partners distributing our products. So we're now going to take this Netflix model, where they start owning the studios, they own the product, they own the copywritten material, and they start streaming their stuff. They start owning everything. So what we decided was to charter the train. So for that one day, the train is ours. It will work to our menu, our route, our service levels, our staffing levels. It will be us that will do this, and we'll have our team on board as well, just to make sure that it works. But for us, it's easier because we work with like-minded partners anyway, so they're great. People like Belmond and Safos and all these people. These are great companies. But even then, we still sort of tweak it. And once you're able to, influence the service level, you're kind of in the game. And the travel partners have to use our copywritten material, our visuals, and they've got to book it on our platform and promote it our way. So we've just taken full control. And 60% of our clients said no. So after 25 years of working with them, we had to part company. So we had to find new travel partners and re-message, and that's why we've got our partnership manager. She's absolutely fantastic. She's been with us for 14 years. That's nearly half the lifetime of the company, and she's pivoted, changed her way of doing things a lot, because I've changed the company's way of doing things a lot. And then we've obviously got my wife Manisha, who's again retrained to modernize what she's doing, but she drives a lot of the agile thinking in the company. And we've got a whole we got a great coder who's been with a great UX guy who's been with us for 5 years plus. But he had to sort of sit with me for a few months to understand the way I do things. But actually, I learned the way that tech guys think. The 80-20 rule, for example. Beforehand we had 50 clients and 50 different ways of doing things. Now it's just one way. It's a great way, but it's one way.
Interesting. So when you're just taking that into a scenario, so you're saying that you're not necessarily tailoring everything for each customer, you're trying to just make things kind of consistently very good rather than aiming for exact tailoring per customer. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. So what we offer is something excellent anyway, which is better than what the market has. So they don't need to tweak it, because they can't compare it to something else, because it's already at the top end. At a price that works. And the other thing I learned, Junaid, is beforehand I was too obsessed with perfection. Again, working with these tech guys, I've learned that excellence is better than perfection.
Absolutely. How do you process it though, Ranjiv, where a customer feels that they were getting 100% quality, but now they're getting 97% or 96%? And if that customer says to you, "Oh, it was a little bit better before," does that?
No, because we're owning the train for the day.
I see.
The quality of what we're giving them is better than what they had before, because beforehand we were taking a carriage of 40 people in a train, which
It's
had
win-win.
4 other carriages. Now we take all the carriages and we're saying, you know, beforehand when you were served bubbly, forget that. We're going to serve you champagne now. It's going to be locally sourced food. This is the menu you're going to get. These are the number of chefs that are going to be working on it. These are the number of people that are going to be serving you. And everything is enhanced. Yes, we charge a premium for this. But when they're on the train, they know where the money's gone.
Really interesting. Ranjiv, what's your views on like the emotional and mental side of business? Do you feel it's quite important to be able to talk about your emotions when you're going through those self-doubts and difficult? Because I would imagine surely that 2020 period would have been difficult, and you must have still had not internal kind of doubt about, can you adapt to all this new stuff you're trying to do? You're trying to change so much. Is it going to work? It must have been quite difficult, must have been quite draining. How important is it to have people that you can talk to and lean on, or do you think that, to be honest, that's neither here nor there?
No. It's a great question, and it's of critical importance. I learned who my friends were during the pandemic. I really learned who they were. I learned from, which team members had my back as well, because we were going into the unknown. But you do need a network of authentic people. I go back to that sort of, word authenticity, who are going to tell you some home truths. And I needed to hear those home truths to make sure if we were going to carry on trading, we had to trade in a different way, in a more digital way. So therefore I spoke to friends who had that digital transformation, and they were absolutely fantastic in terms of the nuts and bolts of how to do it. I was surprised at some friends who I thought might have given me a bit more support. But yeah, very surprised. And to be fair to them, I just think they thought, well, he's gone through so much, there's nothing to worry about. He'll go through this again. So I think in one sense, that was a level of confidence they had in me. But I didn't have that confidence because, as I said, 25% of what I knew beforehand was relevant to today. And I was trying to communicate that to them, and they were just going, no, but you'll be fine. And when people say you're going to be fine and you have doubts, you're not going to be fine, because you want solutions. You want to have a journey of in which direction should I be going, and then how should I be going into this direction. I'm going into this unknown territory here of digitization. We're going to start to charter our own trains. That means high risk. We're building our own platform. We're going for a new market. We've lost 60% of our client base. We're changing our suppliers. This is all going in the unknown. How do I do this? How do I do this when I'm also running out of money and I'm spending money on a platform? All this was just a lot of pressure. And I will say that I had a great friend who knew me the best out of all my friends, and he was great. He would advise me, but he would ask me questions. But unfortunately, we lost him in 2023. So he was great for those 2 years. And I really thank him, but he's not with me anymore, and I really value what he did.
So do you actually owe a lot to where you've got to by even the people you've had around you, would you say, along the journey?
Definitely. And something silly like this, every Thursday we would play football, as bachelors, and then we played for 16, 17 years together. So we knew each other as bachelors, got married, had kids, families know each other. But when you're on the football pitch and you've got each other's backs, you trust each other. Then you're going to have a drink afterwards and you get to know each other. But many of the decisions that I made were challenged by these guys, and vice versa. But we had a great laugh as well, don't get me wrong. But I think these guys really gave me so much clarity, so that when I was moving away from the family way of thinking to another way of thinking, they were so helpful.
When you said that you learned who your friends were, what did you mean by that in terms of why do you think some people were kind of stepping away then? I'm taking that's what you're saying. They weren't kind of there that you expected them to be there when you were going through this tough moment. Why do you think they were?
Yeah, it was a different set of friends.
Yeah,
So
okay.
those friends were great because obviously we'd been on various journeys together. They've had ups and downs, etc. But as you meet other people, yeah, you just feel like if they know me, they'll understand my problem. But obviously it was the way I communicated it. I probably sounded a little bit more upbeat than I should, that I was really feeling, and they're just thinking, well, he's fine. So that's really on me, not on them. But the ones that knew me were probing, and I think they knew that I was taking some risks here. But I had to know that when I was taking these risks, that they were being managed by these guys asking me questions. But what they knew is that once we pressed a button to go digital, then I would do it. But it was that being in no man's land. Should I not?
I actually was just thinking about something you said at the very start of the conversation about community, how a lot of your kind of purpose was driven by, for example, even the cousins around you, the uncle around. Do you feel like as a society we've become a little bit more, I talk about it with my wife, but it's just good, challenge it openly if you want to, but things have got a little bit more individualistic over time. Like,
Yeah.
I feel that way. Obviously, I can't generalize that across all families, but
Yeah.
I feel like everyone now is a little bit more in their own bubble. And I think a lot of people have this mindset of if I just think about myself and focus on my own stuff, I'll be better off.
Yeah.
But if you actually look at your story, you actually thinking about what's wide around you was beneficial for you too. And you're always going to be stronger if you're part of something bigger than you. Would you agree? Like,
Absolutely. It's very poignant what you've just said there, Janelle, because I remember in 2008, someone said something for the first time to me that I'd never heard beforehand.
yeah.
We'll just put up a made up name here, but this chap came along to me and said, I'm leaving the business because I have to do what's right for Nick Smith. And I just couldn't understand that because we had so much more to achieve. But I also understood that not everyone's going to stay with you forever, but he had so much more to achieve as well. But he said he had to do what was right for himself. And I'd never heard that. But after that, I heard it a lot when people were saying they had to do what's right for themselves, because when you're on this environment, we're 100% in, you've got to be full on, if we're going to be an innovation, travel, digital company, etc. But and therefore building teams is really hard these days. I think there are no natural leaders that have come through in our company. Maybe they've been snapped up by others, because people would rather be popular than respected.
Interesting.
In my opinion, in my experience. Whereas for me, it was about being respected by doing the right thing for the family. Now, you might say, well, no, you were being popular. Well, if everyone else is doing it, then I'm not being popular. But for me to be respected by doing the right thing, and having the right friends around me, that's important. And I value, having the right friends. And you need that sort of person just to reflect back to you, but if you're just thinking about yourself all the time, I think you're missing an element of, well, humanity.
Yeah.
I know that sounds a bit deep and philosophical, but what did Gandhi say? He said, to be human is to serve another human. To know yourself is to serve another human. It's a very clumsy interpretation of what he said, but I totally believe in that.
Yeah, I don't know if you agree with this. I actually think human beings are less selfish than they think they are. So
Yeah.
this is my view on things, that a lot of people think that if I am selfish, I will be better off. But then I find people that are very selfish are often quite miserable. And sometimes the only way to truly get happiness and fulfillment, I think, is to help others. I think that's just what helps you feel better. So I think people underestimate that they're not actually as selfish as they think they are. That's I don't know if you kind of articulate that.
If you think, no, you're 100% spot on, Janelle, because if you think about it, if everyone just did one act of kindness every single day,
yeah,
it's a very selfish thing to do because you're going to get a benefit, but you're helping someone else. But how you feel when you see the other person feeling so good, it's just a great start to the day, or a great way of making a bad day good. Just do something for someone else, and do something that they would value as well, because some people say, well, I opened the door for this person, I went past a photocopying machine and I just picked up that's a commendable act. But when you actually go out of your way to do something that helps someone else and they value what you just done, you feel like $1 million.
What do you think the psychology is behind this? I know I've kept you quite long, but I won't keep you too long. But I just want to get your view on a couple of more things. That a lot of people talk about this. I've spoken to other, for example, entrepreneurs that have worked in a corporate environment. I spoke to a lady. She started working as a bookkeeper in a company, all the way up to finance director. So really, really close with that whole company. She left, started her own venture, and those same people that she thought were her friends did not want to support her venture necessarily. And I've spoken to quite a few people like this, where the people that you think will want to support, even it might be so simple as just maybe liking or sharing one of your posts, or something that doesn't even cost anything. It takes a second. Why do you think people are like that? Have you got a view on it? Or first of all, do you agree that people can be like that? Because you might not even agree.
I think people can be like that. I think people are like that, and I think what you're looking at is people's motivations. But maybe they're quite limited, and just sort of to bring it back a little bit, if you I believe there's 3 types of businesses, and people might work for these businesses. You've got the money makers, who basically just want to make money out of you, and then you've got the difference makers, the people that just offer you a slightly more personalized service. They're willing to drop their margin to make you happier. And then you've got the game changers, who will say, do you know what? However it's been done beforehand, let's just change the whole thing. Let's just do it differently. You think about, electric cars, Tesla, forget how cars were, made beforehand. Let's just do it this way. Now, if you work for a company that's a money-making company, you will never understand difference making or game changers, people that work for those types of people, or people who are those types of people. Because money makers, for them to win, someone has to lose. Whereas I believe in an environment of win-win, but most people believe in win-lose. So once you're out of their eye line and you've gone off and done something else, they're thinking, well, I've got nothing to gain from you anymore, if that makes sense. And I think that says more about them than it does about you. But those who are interested in being difference makers or game changers, they'll always have a relationship with you if it's more than transactional. If they just like your philosophy, like your ethos, people don't always need to get something out of someone else. It doesn't always have to be, for me to win, you have to lose. I think that's the essence of where we are in today's world, in the 21st century, which I think is a little bit sad.
No, I really, really appreciate that point. Probably the last kind of question I'll just leave you with is, you did allude to it earlier about retaining people and growing people. A lot of people I talk to, even in a corporate setting, I'm just going to be completely transparent. If I talk to someone who's worked in corporate for years and years, they'll probably say only 1 or 2 managers they can think of that they've thought really inspired them. But often a lot of people feel that perhaps the leadership they've had hasn't been amazing, or the management has been amazing. What advice do you have for people to do the right kind of leadership in terms of incentivizing people, making them want to work with you and grow with you? Because if we take it from a business standpoint, you've got this vision, right? And you have a clear conviction. But to bring someone in and take them on that journey is quite a difficult thing to do. Why would they feel this? You can't expect them to feel the same way you do, but how do you get them to feel that same kind of emotion and passion? Have you got what have you learned about leadership? That's kind of what I'm trying to say.
Well, leadership is so you got to have a clear vision. You got to know where you're going, but I think it's got to be inclusive as well. Ask people as well. Get them involved in the decision-making process, and I think that's really important. Or explain why you're going in a certain direction. I tend to ask people, this is the direction. What do you think? But what I tend to do is, going back to this thing of taking money off the table, what I say to people is, I want you to experiment, and I'm going to give you a casino chip every single day. and I want you to use it. I want you to have a go, take a chance. If you lose, don't worry, because it's my money. It's not your money. And we're going to give you freedom and responsibility to have a go, take a chance. We want you to innovate. I don't want you to follow the rules. I want you to break the boring rules. So if we've got any boring rules in this company, break them. If they're stopping you from innovating, break them. And just have a go, take a chance, and don't worry if it goes wrong. But when it goes wrong, just tell me why you think it went wrong, and what do we need to change, and what do you need to change, because another opportunity is going to be around the corner. And when that opportunity comes around the corner, don't repeat what you've just done. Do something differently. So that's my view of how to create an innovative culture. I'm not sure if that's answered your question, but have a go, take a chance.
Absolutely. And I guess, how do you, it must be difficult though, when you're so passionate about something you've built, it's your baby. Naturally, when you give people that autonomy, they're not always going to do things how you'd want them to be done, or to be honest, they might even do things that you completely disagree with, right? So how do you react in that situation?
Well, when they go mainstream on me, I don't react well, because if I've given you a chip to go and gamble and do something different, and you just go and become mainstream, we have to look at our recruitment process, because we got the wrong person. Having said that, the 1 in 20 that take the gamble and come off, just look at how they just whiz through. They feel like $1 million. They've achieved something that they didn't even believe themselves that they could do. And that energy that they bring is absolutely phenomenal. When you see the confidence that they have, it's great. But it's the ones in the middle. They're the ones that we've got to spend more time with, because they need a bit more nurturing. Sometimes they don't trust the process. They don't trust that we've said, those chips, and they're like, are these chips real? Are you really going to allow us to do it? So a lot of it is about, us saying to them, here's a chip, let's sit next to you. Come on, let's take a chance here. It's those ones in the middle. But those ones that use the chip and go mainstream, they don't last more than 3 months with us. Those ones on this side, they tend to stay here for 4 or 5 years plus.
Interesting. I'm just reading something that you sent to me. Take a chance, make lots of mistakes. You emphasize on that point. So why do you think that's so important to make lots of mistakes? So is that come back to your kind of risk kind of threshold? You have kind of a high risk threshold, would you say? Or
take yourself out of the comfort zone, out of your comfort zone. Make some, don't make basic mistakes, but make mistakes in areas that and then share those mistakes so that your teammates understand what you've done, the risk that you've taken. I mean, I don't rate the result, I rate the method, and I rate the risk. If someone's taken themselves significantly out of their comfort zone, and it might only be a small area for someone else, but if they've taken themselves out of their comfort zone to a big level, they've succeeded. Whatever the result is, they have succeeded. If they learn from what they've done, they've now moved. They've moved the bar for themselves. When people succeed, it's because of them. When they fail, because I've not given them the support. But if they succeed, it's because they've taken that chip and had a go.
Love it, love it. And I think, again, that mindset, I still think that taking money off the table, for me, that is just one of the best things, because again, it just helps with that mindset as well, right? Again, with how you think about the mistake, because if you manage to learn something, that leaves you better off. And even if you've lost money, if you look purely at the money, you'll think it's, oh no, it's a failure, it's a problem, right? But you'd actually just see it, no, it's a great outcome, right? Because I've effectively just spent money to learn all of this, which is
because in the end, that if you take money off the table, you've learned something new, you'll get the money back. You'll either get a better relationship, a better product, a better brand, and if you can get people to trust you because you take money off the table, how much is that worth?
Absolutely. Yeah. Ranjiv, I really appreciate all your time. You honestly shared so many golden nuggets, which I'm sure I've definitely taken a lot away from. I hope people listening could take a lot away from. So yeah, I really, really appreciate your time and sharing all of that.
Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for your questions. And thank you for the patience in listening to my answers.
No, absolutely. No worries.
Take care.